everyone, it's Jake's Metal Chat. Hope you're all well and welcome to episode 51 of my Metal Vault, where I will be exploring and showing you my favourite albums within heavy metal to thrash metal to death metal, black metal, doom metal, sludge metal, folk metal, you name it, all of that excellent stuff. And as well as talking about the albums, I will also be talking about the bands. So a brief history and any releases leading up to the album that I have picked for the episode. And these guys here are one and only one of many Florida death metal giants and one of many death metal bands that got me into the genre that I love the most. Is my all-time favorite genre of metal, but also love my thrash and my black metal and of course my folk metal, my doom, but this one, it's I just love my death metal. As you know, if you've been watching my videos for a very long time. And these guys, they've been around. They did form under a different name 40 years ago, so they were under a different name when they started in 1984, but then changed it because there was another band under the same name, and then swapped the letters around and changed it to the name that we know today, which is Obituary. And these guys, like I said, they one of many bands that got me into death metal. And these guys, very, very groovy stuff, but heavy. Can't forget the heavy. And this album is got to be my favorite from the discography. I also love their debut, which I will be talking about. But let's get on with it. This is once again Obituary. This is their 1990 album, Cause of Death. This album just crushes. Absolutely just one hell of an album. There are the fine lads on the back. Of course, John right there is wearing one of the other bands that got me into the genre. And of course, right there we have Frank, who was the bass player on this release and two other releases as well. Of course, he sadly passed away in 2015 of cancer. It will be in October, 9 years since he passed. But his legacy lives on in this, as well as the incomplete and, well, demise. But of course, this is where you hear him on bass for the first time. Now, let's get the booklet out so you can see the artwork. And I'll talk about the artwork a bit later on, but a lot of you will know what this was originally, who was meant to have this originally. But awesome artwork. One of my favorite artworks in metal, in death metal. Now, favorite logo of mine. That's what the album title there. The title of the album. Another picture of the band right there. And I believe there are no lyrics in here because obviously, as you know, I don't think John really wrote lyrics down for a lot of the songs. But there's a picture of the band right there. I think there's a lot of like thank yous and that and talking about the album. And there's one more picture right there. Not sure where that is, so if anyone knows, do tell me. And I am loving the Incubus shirt that John is wearing right there. I'm not sure what else is wearing. Of course, we have the rest of them right there. Of course, Donald Hardy, which is John's brother, on the drums. James Murphy on the guitar. And Trevor on rhythm. There they all are. And of course, once again, Frank, rest in peace, brother. Your legacy lives on this absolute monster of an album. And let's get the CD there. Of course, this was released on Road Runner Records. Of course, in the year of 1990. But this is a re-release because it's got 3 demos of some songs on here already. So 3 of the songs on here. Now, let's talk about the band. They formed in 1984 under the name Executioner, the traditional spelling of Executioner, but they had to change it because there was a band in Boston under the same name. So they had to change it from the traditional spelling of Executioner and then put the X in front of the E, still called Executioner, but with an X. And I have heard the demo stuff. And yeah, pretty much just like obviously pre-Obituary is the same guys. Well, I mean, lineup changed over time, but a lot of the songs did appear on at least one on this album was on one of the demos, but I will get into the demos there. So obviously they're under that name. And I know at least one of the songs from their demos appears on this album, like I said. I don't know if any others that they've done have. Yes, I am looking at some that have appeared on their debut, which was Slowly We Rot, which is when they changed their name to Obituary in 1988, because for a while, from 84 to 86, they were under Executioner with the traditional spelling, and then 86 to 88 with the different spelling. And then of course, changed it to Obituary again in the year of 1988, but they did split up in 1998. So they split up 10 years after pretty much becoming Obituary and then reformed in 2003. So they've been they've been reactive since 2003. So that's 21 years. But before that, they did release their debut album in 1989. Slowly We Rot on RC Records, which is not going anymore. So this was their debut album, which had a different bass player on there, which was Daniel Tucker, which was he was in Nocturnus AD, was in After Death, obviously Executioner, pre-Obituary. So he was in the band from 88 to 89, so he only did the one album. And hasn't really done a lot of other stuff since. And of course, original guitarist Alan West, who's currently not doing a lot of stuff, obviously was in Massacre on the Aggressive Tyrant demo, as well as pretty much every other Obituary release from Slowly We Rot all the way to Frozen in Time. But obviously the lineup has always been John, Trevor, and Donald. So it's always been the Tardy brothers and Trevor. All the other lineups have changed. They have currently now Kenny Andrews, which I believe is the new lead guitarist. Yep. And another legend within death metal, Terry Butler on the bass, and met him once before. Really nice guy. Really nice guy. But before that, we have got this album. And I just hit my mic again. So after Slowly Rot, they did this album, which is the first one to, of course, feature Frank on the bass. And another legend, that is James Murphy on the guitar. And was in the band until, let's get him up, until, well, oh yeah, only that year, sorry, in 1990. So he was only in the band for that 1 year. But, when you hear James Murphy, you know the sound of the guitar that he uses when he plays his solos on his guitar. You know that signature James Murphy sound, which just does so well here. Of course, Scott Burns did the producing, engineering, and mixing of the album. Alan West was credited for track number 7. Obviously, I'm going to get into the songs in a minute. Of course, the artwork was done by Michael Whalen. I hope I said that right. Whelan. Not going to try and say it again. But he's done artwork, obviously, for Obituary, Demolition Hammer, Evil, who we got Sepultura, Smolder, quite a few bands. And obviously now getting into, now I just said Sepultura, everyone knows the album Beneath the Remains, right? The cover that was used for that was not originally supposed to be that cover. It was meant to be this. It was meant to be this cover. Now, imagine if this said Sepultura Beneath the Remains and Obituary used the cover that Sepultura ended up using. And someone actually did do that. Or at least found like the concepts for each. I don't know, but might have just, put this logo in orange, that in orange, and use that cover. But yeah, because I got told this so many times some years back now that this was meant to be the cover for Beneath the Remains. Couldn't even talk then. But of course, history had a different path for each of those albums and their covers. And of course, the cover fits this album very well. It's one of my favorite covers, and of course, one of my favorite logos there, and one of my favorite albums. My all-time favorite album by Obituary, and I'll tell you why now. Let's get into the songs. So we have to start this whole album off, Infected. Just how that starts off, just because all this, you just get those crunchy guitars, crushing bass, pounding drums, and then you just get John's monstrous, evil sounding vocals just throughout this entire album. It all starts off with the first track, Infected, and this next song is one of my favorites, Body Bag. Just how that starts off, you got like that demonic voice doing like a growling, and it's just like, and then the guitars just come right in, and then John comes in, and it's just continuing on from the first track, and then you get Chopped in Half, which is not a lot of lyrics on there. It repeats the same lyrics, but looking at the lyrics here again, just pure genius right there. And obviously it is all just instrumental throughout the entire track, and then you get James Murphy's solo right at the end. Of course, his solo work on here is just, I'm always going to love his guitar work. And they also did, this is track 4, they did a cover of Circle of the Tyrants by Celtic Frost. And it's a really, really cool cover. One of my favorite Celtic Frost covers from a death metal band. I know Opeth did the same cover of this, but I prefer their cover because it's just with like every song just really groovy, heavy, and just absolutely pounding. And that goes into Dying, just continuing it on with much of the same, with the guitars, the drumming, bass. Frank's bass just on here feels like it's just going for it. And of course, because I also play guitar, I also play bass, and I have played drums. I haven't played in a long time, but I will get them back up and listen to something like this, box that interest into doing that again. Of course, like I said, Dying, just continuing on from their cover of Circle of the Tyrants, which is also a favorite Celtic Frost song of mine. And I heard the demo version of this song, and that is Find the Arise, which of course is just like Chopped in Half, not very many lyrics, but still very effective. And John just absolutely going for it. All of them just absolutely going on their respective instruments. with Donald on the drums, James and Trevor on their guitar, and Frank on his absolutely crushing bass. And then we get onto the title track, which just has a nice little opening with some guitar, and then you get James Murphy solo right there before it just ends, and then you get a guitar with John's vocals over it, and then it just starts picking up, and then John just comes straight in and just beautiful. Then Memories Remain. Just another excellent track. Just very much of the same groovy, heavy, just absolute fierceness from everyone. And then we end on another favorite track of mine. Of course, the title track is a favorite of mine, Finally Arise. Every song on here is just excellent. But I got my favorite tracks from the album, and the last one just to close it all off, and it just goes. You get something before that, like a little interlude before it goes straight into the song, and it's not, because these guys have been categorized as, I think someone tried to categorize them as death doom. They got those kind of doom elements in there, but they're just straight up death metal. But they blend that style, that they do blend doom elements into their music, and it works really well. And it definitely works with the title track, and it does, and you get a bit in this song, but then it just picks up, and that's why if you just type Obituary Turned Inside Out on YouTube, you'll find a live footage of them at the Marquee in London, which is no longer there. But people are just going nuts, just stage diving and everything. But yeah, to end it all off, Turned Inside Out, just to end it all. Perfect ending to the album, to a perfect album, because to me it is a perfect album. And man, yeah, because all the sound effects, and his name's been popping up here on my series quite a lot. Kent Smith, who's done stuff for, once again, Corner, Iced Earth, Loud Blast, Pestilence, Resurrection, Twisted Sister, and Toxic, and Sepultura. So he's done effects for, and as well as providing various instruments that you wouldn't normally hear in music such as this. Just gives it that added extra of just downright monstrous proportions right there. And just overall, this album is just, there's a reason why it's one of my favorites, because I've said this before, a lot of dedication went into it from these fine young men right here. These fine gentlemen right here made this album possible, as well as Scott Burns producing it. I know there's going to be people out there saying that they don't like any Scott Burns stuff, but he did an excellent job mixing and engineering and producing this album, so well done to that. It's because there's a lot of albums like this that I can think of, but this, like I said, it's quite groovy as well. And again, you got that element of doom in it, even though they're not a death doom metal band, but you can probably get what I mean. Especially with Calls of Death, it's got that slow bit at the start with James solo over it, and blends beautifully. Every element of all the songs, be it if they have those elements or not, it's just amazing. And I do urge any new death metal, any fans of death metal, anyone that is new to death metal, to check this out. You won't be disappointed. You won't be sorry, because it's absolutely crushing. is a banger of an album, absolute belter. And there's a reason why this became one of my favorite albums for pretty much everything I just said. I believe I learned one of these songs. It might have been Body Bag. So, you know, and I know I learned a bit of Slowly We Rot as well, which I might end up covering here on the Vault. I don't know. But then I try to stick with at least one album from one of the bands, even though I did that with Metallica and Sugar, but still. But I thought I'd go with my favorite one. This is for any fans of death metal. And I love my old school death metal more, and this is as old school as you are going to get. There's a lot of excellent old school death metal albums. This is just on that mountain, and I mean a mountain of those. And I know they're still keeping that sound today. And you know, it's one of those bands that there's bands like this that very rarely stick with that style that he started with. Autopsy's still sticking with what they did back in the late 80s. And these guys are still doing it today. And this album is a testament to that. Of course, this album on the 19th of September of this year will be 34 years old. It was released on the 19th of September 1990. So yeah, 34 years old. This will be 34 years old. So nearly 34 years of just excellent death metal. You know, and a lot of my favorite death metal bands are from Florida. So these guys, Resurrection, Brutality, Morbid Angel, the list just goes on. But just to name a few there. But of course, it's almost to ask me what albums, what bands would be my favorite, but or what's one of my favorite albums and one of my favorite bands from that scene. I'll go with this. And it's going to come to the overall conclusions that I usually do for these videos. But before I do that, I know there's so much more I could say about this. But I know there's going to be a lot more metal YouTubers out there that have covered this album. Probably have said similar things that I've said right now. Probably said some other things that I haven't even said. But we can all agree that this album will stand the test of time. It will always stand the test of time. And well, something I haven't said yet in any of the videos and any about any of the albums that I love. I will die on that hill. I will defend this album for these reasons that I'm telling you now. And a lot of them I've said for various other albums. It's heavy. You know, that's the most important. It's groovy, like I've mentioned, is quite groovy, but also has those elements, like very doomy elements. Obviously, these guys are just straight up death metal, but a lot of bands would have added those elements in there, and then people would have categorized them as, you know, being death thrash or just death metal, death doom, or you know, but like, but I hope what I'm saying makes sense. So yeah, it's heavy, groovy, with that mix of those doom elements in there. It's crushing, it's savage, beautifully executed from start to finish. Everyone did so well on this album, from John's vocals to the guitars by Trevor and James, the drumming by Donald, and of course the legend that is Frank. You know, let's say his full name, Frank Watkins. Rest in peace, brother. Your legacy lives on this album, and let's show him there one more time. wearing a excellent Godflesh long sleeve right there. A man with taste. And most importantly, this album is a timeless masterpiece. I've said that for very many albums, but I mean it when I say that. This is a timeless masterpiece, and it will continue to be. Once again, like I said, I will defend this album. And I hope there's a lot of fans of this album that will defend it as well. It's excellent, 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 excellent. Beautifully done. Like I said, beautifully executed. Well done to all of the guys on here for bringing this album to light, bringing this album to fans of death metal, the extreme side of metal. Once again, about the artwork, just beautifully done. So much more we can say here. But if you haven't heard it yet, I do highly recommend that you check this out. Because there's always new fans getting into death metal. This is one for you. Take a mental note of this. Or if you're watching this video now and you're like, just give it, pause this video and go listen to it. And yeah, come back and you'll understand why I love it so much. For all the reasons I'm just going to repeat one more time. It's heavy, it's groovy, it's savage, it's beautifully executed, and it's a timeless masterpiece, and it will continue to be. So once again, Obituary and Cause of Death. And on a side note, this was in my first ever video on YouTube before I went under the name of Jake's Metal Chat on here. So yeah, this is one of the first ones that I've that's weird because this is one of the first albums I showed on my channel. That's how much I love this album. How much I love this album. Once again, Obituary and Cause of Death. Check it out if you have not yet, because it's an excellent, excellent, well crafted album. And that is it for another episode of my Metal Vault. I know, sorry, I had to change it to today. I said I couldn't do it on Friday, but I did do my collection update. We'll be sticking to the normal format of how I do these videos because I got another episode lined up here, but I can always change that to a later episode so I can find another band to talk about, because I've got so many albums to re-listen to, or if it's an album I've never heard from one of my favorite bands before, or band I don't even know. Of course, that'll be in a later episode. So thank you for all the support for throughout the years, because I've reached over 700 subscribers, like I mentioned before in another video, which is totally nuts. And of course, I uploaded, speaking about, still on the subject of death metal, my footage of Mortiferum is up as well, who I saw with Garia and Wolves in the Throne Room. And of course, a little bit of history about them in there. What's what I try to do for this channel. This is what I like. This is what I do for this series. But just go into like a little bit of history, and then that goes into the obviously talking about the band, any releases, and then talking about the album that I've picked and all the time. Obituary, Cause of Death. Absolutely fucking excellent, excellent album. Excellent, excellent piece of death metal right here. And once again, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like this video, share it around, comment down below about the album, about the band. When did you first see them? What was the first album you ever heard by Obituary? And most importantly, don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date with everything that I am doing on this channel. And just one more time, I'm going to keep mentioning this until it happens next week now, which I'm going to double check on that. Yeah, next Sunday, as it is Sunday the 2nd of June, Sunday the 9th of June, which on the 7 p.m. That's what I was trying to do. So let me say that again. On the 9th of June, which is next Sunday, 7 p.m. UK time, 1 p.m. American time, I'm going to be live here on YouTube. So I won't be using Zoom as I do for these videos. So I'll be on YouTube talking to Ken of Ken's Death Metal Crypt, as I'm talking about a excellent death metal album right here. We'll be talking about death metal, and obviously it is going to be his final time here on YouTube as he is closing it all down. But thought I get him on here, and we will be discussing obviously his channel, what he's going to be doing beyond that, death metal in general, and any new bands and labels that he wants to recommend to all of you, and even myself, because there's probably some I haven't even heard of, but a lot of the ones he mentions have been appearing on his channels lately, and I always find new bands with him. And I know there's a lot of us, not just me included, but a lot of you out there who listen to excellent stuff like this, is carrying on that. And of course, we'll be showing some favorite albums of ours from either this year, last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whenever. I mean, it could be a bit longer than that as well. So, like, anyway, thanks for tuning in. I've been Jacob Jake's Metal Chat. Keep that banner of metal well and truly high, and I will see you all again in another episode of my Metal Vault.